It is the San Francisco 49ers world in 2024. They can do whatever they want. The Super Bowl window is wide open, and we will tell you why they will be able to operate so freely in 2024. Coming at you right now.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you as always. A very special guest on this Wednesday episode. You know the score if you are an everydayer out there. Thanks to all the everydayers who are tuned in every single day to Locked On 49ers right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets. With any winning $5 bet, that's $150 to play with. If your first bet wins, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And now, let's bring on today's guest.
Nicholas Winkler, come on down.
Can't believe it. Wow.
Wink, what's happening, my man? For those of you who do not know, and maybe are first-timers, and maybe becoming everydayers, Nicholas Winkler joins us on Wednesdays, Winky Wednesday, as we call it. My former radio colleague, we used to report on traffic together. We started a 49ers podcast that predated Locked On 49ers, and as he is sometimes known, the voice of the fan, and likes to join us weekly and chat 49ers. So, Wink, how you doing today? Are you pumped for the offseason now? Have you gotten over the Super Bowl slump?
Yeah, I mean, come on, guys. It's Combine Week. Let's see who practices the best. Come on. Let's see who's out there, who can run the fastest and bench the most and jump the highest. Here we go.
The joke that my co-host on Peacock and Williamson, Matt Williamson, loves to tell, and especially Combine Week, is he loves watching the hot young tight ends in those shorts running around out there because he's a big tight end guy. So I know Croc's going to drop a pause on us right now about that one, but I'm on for it. There's been a lot of talk about Super Bowl windows, and I want to get into that with you guys today. And last offseason, we talked about a 2-year window, which was 2023 and 2024, with a cheap quarterback and a ton of talent on the team. And then going into the 2024 offseason, there was a little doom and gloom after a Super Bowl loss. And then do you have to trade Brandon Ayuk? Or you're gonna have to start cutting some really good players. You have to cut Kyle Juszczyk. You have to cut Eric Armstead's and players like that, Dre Greenlaw, so you can get under the cap and be cap compliant and operate the way you want to operate this offseason. But when you look at where the 49ers are right now, guys, and the news that happened this week with the salary cap and how much it went up. The salary cap went up $30 million. The 1994 salary cap, the first year of the cap, was only $30 million itself. So the league went up the 1994 total salary cap this year, and it was one of the biggest increases, if not the biggest increase ever. I think there was a COVID increase that remember it went down and then it stabilized and then went back up big. So business is booming for the NFL. Business is booming for the 49ers. The cap goes up 13 point something %, and that's a lot of extra breathing room. And it hit at the right time for the 49ers, who are now not as constrained as far as the salary cap goes and able to operate this offseason. So I want to start there with this conversation, guys. And Croc, I'll go to you first. Should we start gearing up for maybe a big free agent addition that we don't expect because of all this extra cap space? They still have to do some work to get more space, but we didn't see Javon Hargrave coming last offseason. Can we see something big on the horizon, a trade for a veteran, a big free agent signing? Because nobody's really projecting that for the 49ers this offseason, Croc.
I think it's hard to even project it when you look at the 49ers roster. Like, where on the roster are you saying, you know what, we need to throw a lot of money at this position? I think you and I talked about it ad nauseum last year. I felt like the defensive line in the previous year, like, they needed some help. It was kind of Bosa and then everybody else. So you knew that they had to make some kind of moves, whether it was at edge, whether it was an interior to help Eric Armstead. This year, I think you're finding it a little bit harder to do so. Now, maybe you look at the offensive line and think that that's a position that they can address right guard, maybe spend money on right guard, draft a right tackle. I can see them potentially doing that. But I think that what they're doing right now, and they've freed some cap space by restructuring a couple of different contracts, it might just be to make room to make sure that you can keep a guy like Brandon Ayuk and make him a priority, and then maybe be able to work off of that with some flexibility.
Yeah, I think you said it. I think that if you are going to go after something, it is probably on that offensive line or defensive line. I think those are kind of the two areas where the 49ers can kind of address that in free agency and in the draft as well. And I know the 49ers rolled over a bunch of money from last year too, and then this increase. And there's going to be some restructures that are going to bump this number up really high. So it gives you great hope, right, that this run isn't over yet, that they can maybe extend Ayuk. And you got to think long term too, like what's going to happen next year with Brock Purdy, like things like that. There's got to be things in the future to look forward to as 49er fans coming off of this disappointing season, or the end to the season at least that we just had. And this seems perfect. This was like, as soon as that cap number came out, it was one of these. Yes. Because,
all right.
You got to work on that, right?
All the teams have more money to work, or more cap space to work with now too. So that means prices are going to go up. So,
sure.
Brandon Ayuk's agent looks at that and says, okay, who's my closest player comp? Is it, we want AJ Brown money? Well, let's add 13% to that as well. So that's what we're going to start to see probably with some numbers. And Ayuk's going to get more than probably we expect with almost every contract we see that gets signed in every offseason. And dude, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb are going to get re-signed at some point. So get Ayuk's deal done first, 49ers, if you're trying to sign Ayuk, because we don't want to see what those deals come in as before you have to sign Ayuk.
Set the bar.
Right,
Don't have to clear it.
Because if you pay him a little bit more than expected now, that's better than paying a lot more than expected later, which will start to make 2025 more difficult, keeping Debo plus Brandon Ayuk. You start talking about having the best fullback in the league, and paying a fullback as much as as the 49ers are. I don't think they have to do anything in 2024, but 2025, you got to re-up Brock Purdy, and things start to get, a little bit different for the 49ers. But as 2024 is concerned, it's wide open. They can operate however they want. It just depends how much they want to put on the credit card. And, the more restructures you do, the more guaranteed money that puts on the books for guys later that you might need to cut, and then you have dead money. And so, But as far as 2024 is concerned, Super Bowl window wide open. 49ers have one of the best rosters in the league still. Brock Purdy, should probably improve on what he's only been a starter for one full season in the NFL, right? So you should expect some improvements there. And he's got to have a full offseason to prepare this time, instead of it was less than a year ago that he was having. Remember this time last year, we're like, how come Brock Purdy hasn't had surgery yet? He's not even going to be ready to play. and so he's going to have a full offseason. So the 49ers have an opportunity to operate. Talking about guards, by the way, Laken Tomlinson, released by the New York Jets. Wink, I know you were a big Laken Tomlinson guy. I think he's going to get a lot less money this offseason than he got when he signed as a free agent with the Jets. We think about a reunion with Laken Tomlinson. We talked about reunions last week. His name wasn't on the list yet.
No, and now you got to add it, I think, towards the top of the list, because you know me. I mean, anybody that's listening to the show know I got guys, right? And Laken Tomlinson was always that guy. I called him out early on in his career with the 49ers. It's like, man, this guy's always getting false starts, and he's always, come on, Laken, step it up. And boom, he was just the man for almost 5 seasons. I think he started nearly every game with the 49ers. I mean, talk about durability too. That's such a big issue when it comes to offensive linemen, is just having the availability of being on the field. And Laken Tomlinson's done that the last 6 or 7 years. Even with Detroit, I think he started most of his games there. And then with New York, I think he started every single game there. And if you could bring in a guy like Laken Tomlinson, a guy who's solid on that offensive line, I know he's never played right guard, but I think he could figure it out. He seems like a pro's pro, and a guy who could really make that transition to the right side and really make it work.
Okay, free agency, the 49ers have a lot of work to do in-house, and maybe some bookkeeping, but there's enough cap space now for them to do it. They're going to operate how they need to operate. Probably minor additions. Don't expect one of those Javon Hargrave signings. If there's a big signing, probably going to be their own guy in Brandon Ayuk that they're re-upping. Next, though, let's talk NFL draft and why the 49ers with 11 picks. I know they're picking late. They're picking 31. We'd rather they be picking 32. they can do what they want there as well. Let's do some calculations and where the 49ers could move around if they want to in the NFL draft. Next. This episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to play with if your first bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props. And if you don't want to bet on the NBA, that's okay. You're an NFL guy through and through. There's no NFL games to bet on, but you know what there is to bet on? Future Super Bowl champion, San Francisco 49ers maybe, and those tasty draft props. And if you're listening to Locked On 49ers on the daily, you're going to learn a lot about some of these prospects. Might get a little leg up against the competition there as it pertains to those draft props at FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL and the NBA. Today's episode is also sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. A lot of us spend our lives wishing we had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters to you so you can do more of it, and you're not looking backward at where did the time go. You're looking forward at, oh yeah, all the time I have to do this. And sometimes you just need that check-in every week to make sure you're hitting the goals in your life to create that time for yourself. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try, and a special offer for our listeners for BetterHelp, which is entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Learn how to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp, and visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, I'm going to share the screen, guys, with our with the help of drafttech.com, who always puts the points totals together on the draft board with all the teams' draft picks, and they have the 49ers highlighted here. And just to give you a little look of the draft trade chart here, and I'm going to scroll it if you're looking on YouTube with us. If not, I'll explain what's going on with this point system. And this is actually the Rich Hill trade chart version, not the Jimmy Johnson trade chart version, although they're very similar in a lot of ways. The Jimmy Johnson chart is just an algorithm from 1 through 200 and whatever the draft picks and what their value is. And a lot of teams have used that in the past and go off of it and kind of have their own draft charts now. The Rich Hill draft chart, which we're looking at now, was something that was thought up, and basically it's utilizing all the trades that have happened in NFL drafts and putting point values on it. And it's pretty close, but just slightly different. And you'll see some picks that are worth a little bit more, and it might be skewed in some ways and less skewed in other ways. And so it's based on actual trades that have happened. Also, not to be confused, to make this even more confusing, with the Spielberger Fitzgerald chart from the guys at Over the Cap, that is based on what the actual value of picks are based on the contracts of players that are signed from players that are drafted in certain positions. So this is the Rich Hill chart again, and this is based on trades that have actually happened. It's pretty close in a lot of ways to the Jimmy Johnson trade chart. All right, with that out of the way, the 49ers 31st pick, guys, is worth 190 points on this chart. And by the way, of all the highlighted picks, if you're watching on YouTube, it shows 12 picks. The 49ers don't have their original 5th round pick anymore. They do have a comp 5th round pick here at the bottom, number 176, but that pick 165, their original 5th round pick, was traded away in, I believe, the McCaffrey trade, right? I'm still paying that 5th rounder off from that one, or was it a different? I don't know. Anyway, they have 11 picks. There's 12 picks highlighted here, so they do have to clean that up. But anyway, the 49ers have 11 draft picks to do with, guys, whatever they want. And I'm not a math wizard, but if you look at past trades, the 49ers have 190 points on this chart with pick 31. If you add, say, pick 94, their 3rd round selection, which is worth 41 points, that's 231 points. Well, that can get you up to pick 25, Green Bay Packers, maybe even as high as the Houston Texans, potentially, if you had a 3rd round pick at pick 23. Now, you'd have to start giving up a little bit more if you want to get higher than that. But I'm looking at this trade chart and seeing pick 23, the Houston Texans, down to about Tampa Bay, pick 26. Arizona Cardinals probably aren't going to try to help you out, but maybe even just a couple slots up here, 28, the Buffalo Bills. The 49ers can operate and move up if they want to in the draft pretty easily. And I'm trying to do a little math here. It's hard. Oh, actually, you know what? I take it back. They did the math for me at the top. So the 49ers have 414 total points, which theoretically, if they traded all their draft picks, could go up into the top 10, pick 7 or 8 in the draft. That's probably not going to happen. But the 49ers can move around and do what they need to, whether it's up, down, move around in mid rounds, late rounds, move up in the first round. So I think it's going to be a really fun draft. I think the 49ers are going to move around a lot. And we have talked about team needs quite a bit on this podcast, guys. But what are you eyeing? What do you want to do in the draft? What do you want to accomplish here as it's combine week? Are you looking at certain positions, certain players? Should the 49ers go up? And who are you going up for? Croc, let's start with you.
Oh, man. If it's me, I'm always looking to get better in the trenches. And I think the 49ers have adopted that mindset as well. Offensive tackle, maybe offensive guard. Because I feel like if you're drafting later in the first round, then you can find a really good guard. I'd say second round is a little bit more ideal for a guard unless you have like a kind of a can't miss guy. But, I think you can find a tackle that can play guard and maybe transition to the outside and play tackle once either, Kivitz, and we'll see what happens with him. But definitely Trent Williams leaves. But I'll be looking for that offensive lineman and that edge rusher. Who is highest on my board out of those two positions? Now, if I want to start getting a little spicy, I may want to go with a receiver that's really talented, but doesn't have to rush to play right now. We know Kyle Shanahan doesn't like to play young well, ideally he wants to, but with his mindset on how he wants things done, you're more than likely not going to play right away. Or in Brandon Ayuk's case, he's not going to want to play you unless there's some kind of injuries going on. But maybe a receiver that has a quote unquote red shirt season, but actually gets to play a lot more, has a lot of talent. And then next year, depending on what happens with Ayuk or Debo or whoever else, now you have that long-term guy on a younger contract. So that would be me getting a little spicy, but I lean towards defensive line, edge rusher, and definitely offensive line.
Yeah, I like that. And I think for me, it's more so for me, it's not about what I want the 49ers to do. It's what I want them not to do when it comes into this draft. And that's don't give up a bunch of future draft picks unless you're moving up for something incredible. Like I know you do need to address the right side of that offensive line for something a little bit longer. And if you do have to give up something, hopefully it is that kind of stalwart right tackle that's going to be there for the next 5 to 10 years, in that case, I would enjoy giving up a future or, first, second, whatever, as long as you're going to get that guy, right? But that's the risk of it, right? Is you don't know if you're going to hit on it. I mean, and you look at this board too, 94 or 98, those are going to be a running back that's not even going to make the squad. So you got to kind of put those away as something that's not going to happen, right? You don't make that move, Kyle, is what I'm saying. Don't do that. So to me, those are the biggest two don't do's. So as for do's, you got to just fill the gaps. You got to go out and get the most talented guys because this is a very talented roster. But is it deep? I don't know. I don't know how deep this roster is. Do you go out and do you draft a quarterback later too? I mean, right now, you're probably going to lose your backup quarterback. So you got Brock Purdy, and then what going forward? So I think that's another thing they might have to address here in the draft.
I like that. Not trading future picks. You have 11 picks, and Croc talked about it earlier with free agency. They do have some needs, and they have to fill out part of the roster. And the 49ers have been so good on day 3, you don't want to just give up all those selections. But yeah, you've got these extra picks to play with, and the 49ers haven't been amazing at that comp late third round pick area, even though they've collected so many of them. Throw that on there. How about this though? Maybe stand pat in round 1, trade up in round 2. Croc, you talking wide receivers? Second round has been a bonanza for wide receivers in the NFL draft. That might be the best place to target them instead of trying to fit a guy in late in round 1. By the way, 49ers, last time they picked at 31, they went up to 25 to select Brandon Ayuk. So that worked out pretty good last time. So that's a good signal of what the 49ers could potentially do, get up into the mid-20s. I think pretty easily, you have to have a trade partner, someone willing to dance with you. But the 49ers can absolutely do that. So when we're looking at prospects and, someone says, oh, blanking prospect from whatever state, no way they're going to be there at pick 31. Well, the 49ers might not be there at 31 either because they can move up and get their guy if he's falling down the board a little bit. But how about moving up in the second round? And maybe it's even better value for the 49ers to move up from pick 63 3 at the end of round 2, you add that pick number 98 comp pick late in round 3 to the mix, and you can get up into the 50s. And if you add the other third instead, maybe you get up a little further, and maybe you have to sprinkle in a 6th or a whatever, and you can get up maybe top 50 and grab yourself a prospect that maybe even you had a first round grade on and get 2 of your first round prospects in this draft. So I like the 49ers to move up with one of those first couple of picks, and they have plenty of picks to do it, and they haven't been all that great in that late third round range anyway. So yeah, I'd be okay with them spending pick 98 to secure their guy ahead of 31 or ahead of 63. And again, in this Super Bowl window, the 49ers can operate however they want this offseason. They've got all the picks to do it. They've got all the cap space they're going to need to accomplish their goals and what they need to do. And it's already a star-studded roster. So I'm excited for it. And when I started looking at this draft chart, I had to bring it up with you guys on the pod because I can't wait to see how this all shakes out. And it's going to be a fun draft season. We get to talk about first-round prospects. We get to talk about second-round prospects. This is amazing, guys. I'm pumped for it. I can't wait to wake up in the morning and watch tape every day now, knowing that there's these blue-chip prospects the 49ers might be able to draft.
And you know what position it feels like it hasn't been as much of a focal point with the fans. I feel like a lot of their attention has been get better on that offensive line. Like, got to have O-line. I've been screaming, got to, edge rusher. I think that should be a priority. But, man, cornerback, a position that every single year you feel like you need to get better at. And that is one of the few positions on this roster where the 49er fans, even though they say, hey, watch this guy because we watch Cooper DeJean, the corner out of Iowa. We watch him, watch some other guys, Kool-Aid McKinstry. But you don't hear fans saying, oh, we need a first-round corner. And this might be the first time ever. And I think during draft time, when the 49ers have a first-round pick or a second-round pick, that the 49er fan base is not screaming to prioritize cornerback in the draft. I think that's a good thing. It says a lot about how they feel about guys like Diamador Lenoir and obviously Traverse Ward. Now, I do think that fans would like to replace Ambry Thomas, but I don't think that's like a big priority on their list over some of the other positions. I think that's a good problem to have if you're the 49ers.
Yeah, you do have to shore up the offensive line. Maybe they're able to do something, minor trades, free agency or something that doesn't make it such a huge need going into draft day. Then you can have a little bit more fun with wide receiver looking down the road, with cornerback, maybe even with pick 31, but especially with with that second round pick and maybe moving up from there. So I love where the 49ers are now. And the more I look at it, I almost like the second round move up more than the first round move up. And a lot of talent early in this draft. I want to talk about the talent late in the draft, though, guys, and why this might not be the best year for the 49ers to have all this day 3 success that they've had historically in the NFL draft. Next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. I love the Guaranteed Fit. You go on eBay Motors, big green check mark. The part is for your vehicle, will fit, and you can buy with confidence. And with all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, guys, day 3. And we're talking about all these positive things, what the 49ers are going to do, Super Bowl windows in 2024. But there's one aspect of this offseason that's interesting as it pertains to the NFL draft. And this is where the NIL and the college stuff is kind of changing the game. And Wink disappeared for a second. He'll be back shortly, I'm sure. Croc, only 50-something, 56, I think, underclassmen declared for the 2024 draft. That's fewer than we've seen in, decade plus, because it had grown up to like 100 and something almost every single year with underclassmen. And that's, 50 fewer potentially draftable players, which means while most of the guys who declared are higher caliber prospects and going to go pretty early for the most part, there's a lot of guys that are underclassmen that slip in drafts. And also, if an underclassman is going to go high, that means a senior is going to slide down the board potentially. And this year, that is maybe not going to be the case. And maybe those day 3 picks are less valuable than other years because there's 50 fewer draftable prospects that are going to be in this class, Croc.
I wonder if we're feeling like the last effects of COVID, because remember that was the time where a lot of guys that year didn't count for guys, or guys were able to stay in longer. And some of the guys that were coming out of high school, they're coming in, then they're not playing that year, then they were able to get like a whole nother year. I think we're finally feeling the effects of it. This might be the last year that you start to feel that, though.
Yeah, that's a good point, because the highest number of underclassmen that declared for the draft was the 2019 year, where COVID hit, and then nobody knew if there was going to be a 2020 season. So they're like, "Oh, I'm going to declare," right? And so we had the most underclassmen then, and then we also had the extra eligibility for college players. So we had a bunch of 6-year seniors for a couple of drafts. We're still seeing some of those players in this class. You know, like Michael Penix, the Washington quarterback. He's one day, can't remember if it's one day older, one day younger than Trey Lance. And, he's still like, he's, had 3 more years of college football to play than Trey Lance did. And he's had, and a lot of these, super seniors that had an extra year of eligibility that didn't count. So there's been a lot of weirdness. I think it's a great call, Croc. This is kind of the last COVID effects we're seeing. And then plus NIL money, keeping some prospects in that may have declared in the past. And now all of a sudden we have a record low, a recent record low. And back in the day, there used to be very few underclassmen. Do you remember back in the day, it was like a guy that could go number 1 overall, and we weren't even sure if he was going to declare or not. Now it's automatic. It's like, what? I got a 3rd round grade. I'm out of here. So we're seeing less of that now, which I guess is a good thing for college football, right? If it's keeping more players at their universities. I don't know.
I think the transfer portal also has a lot to do with that, right? Too guys that can move around and go somewhere else and maybe improve their stock even more. They're like, I'm a 3rd round, a 4th round grade. I can go over here and be a starter for a whole year and maybe bump up into the 2nd round. Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
My guy, Jonah Coleman, he's running back at Arizona. He was a true sophomore last year. He had a terrific sophomore campaign, especially when Michael Wiley, their starting court running back, he went down. Jonah took off, and he ended up being the highest graded PFF running back in the nation, finished really strong. Well, what did he say? I'm not going to stay at Arizona. My coach is leaving. I'm out of here too. So now he's at University of Washington. He's pegged in to be their starting running back, and that just kind of helps improve his draft stock. Now, again, he could stay at Arizona, and people, you either like him or you don't, but it definitely helps more playing on a bigger stage and playing at a more prestigious program like University of Washington.
All that said, though, that does mean pickings are going to be slimmer on day 3. And I've heard some draft analysts talk about that. And I think it was Albert Breer that talked about how he had, spoken to some executives and scouts and GMs and things. And, there's a few things that he's seeing that maybe is going to shape the draft a little bit. Like, teams really like JJ McCarthy a lot more than where he's being mocked in mock drafts. And that, some teams love one prospect over the other and nobody's really talking about it in mock drafts or whatever. And one of the other ones was, while there's a lot of good prospects early in this class, the day 3 talent is maybe not quite as high as it was. So now we'll see if the 49ers are really good at mining those diamonds out of the late rounds. A lot of people said Adam Peters was the reason too. And Adam Peters is now the GM in Washington. And it's funny because it might just be not that great of a day 3. And if the 49ers come up empty and don't have one of those amazing day 3 drafts, people are going to see, I told you it was Adam Peters. It might be the class as well. But so Niners have a ton of late picks. Might not be the best year to have a ton of late picks. And so another reason to maybe, hey, add them to the trades and let's move up and get the guys we do love in this draft. We're about out of time here, guys. Who do you want the 49ers to draft with their final 7th round pick, number 249 go? Just kidding. No, we're not that deep into the NFL draft season yet.
Peacock, have you been seeing all the comments? They're like, why are you guys watching this position? We need to be watching this position. I had to comment. I said, look, it is a long draft season. We will bang out 10 more offensive linemen at the very least. I think we have 2 offensive linemen coming up on the docket on an upcoming episode. We're going to talk about plenty of defensive linemen. We're going to be talking about linebackers, safeties, receivers, tight ends. There are tons and tons of prospects that we're excited to talk about, especially now that, like you mentioned earlier, Peacock, we have a higher draft pick this year, or higher first 2. We got first round, second round. I mean, come on now. So be patient with us. We will get to all the positions that you guys want and plenty more. But there's a lot of prospects, man, a lot of time to do so.
Right. And we don't know if we love a prospect for the 49ers until we evaluate him. Right. So some we will like for the Niners, some we won't. We got to be able to build a draft board and know where these prospects are going to go. So we got to look at a lot of positions. But you're right. Up next, we got Jordan Morgan, tackle out of Arizona. Is he a guard? Is he a tackle? Patrick Paul, big tackle, not a guard, out of Houston. Seen both of those prospects mocked to the 49ers. So those guys are coming up. We got Nate Wiggins, corner from Clemson, on the list. One of my favorites, I'm finding at wide receiver, the next Debo Samuel, because there's always a next Debo every single year. This year, it's Malachi Corley out of Western Kentucky. So a lot of prospects to come. You can always drop a comment on YouTube and let us know what prospect you want to hear about. Wink, you have any prospects you want to hear about? Any punters you're scouting out there?
Okay, so as voice of the fan, I got to bring it up, man. I know that Twitter has been asking a lot for you to bring back the shadow draft, so I feel like it's my duty to mention it here on the pod that people want the shadow draft back.
Shadow 49ers could make a comeback. I might want to bring on an assistant GM, though, and Eric Crocker, as we build this Locked On 49ers draft board, and I think that could be a lot of fun, and it'd be a fun exercise on draft day to go through that and pick that one prospect we like at each spot, because it's really fun to do. Can
we do this? And we could kind of, pencil it in for now. Any chance we link up? Can we do a redo on 2018 and meet up at a bar and have some fans come watch the draft with us, and we give our shadow draft picks right then and there? I'll be free I said I'll be free. All we do is podcast, but I'll make sure that I can be out there for those 3 days.
I like that idea. Live draft show, hanging out with the folks. Fun. Niners have a first-round pick this year. It could be a lot more fun in that regard. And 3 day 2 picks as well. So even day 2 might be a fun one to do. So, yeah, let's think about that. See if we can find a venue and maybe even bring back the shadow draft. Who knows? It's draft season. We're going to have a lot of fun with it. That's why you are here every day with us. Your team every day is what we do. Shout out to the everydayers. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. Croc and I back tomorrow right here. Maybe we'll have a defensive coordinator by then, by the way. Locked On 49ers.
See you.